Audio setup. Wait, am I live? No, I'm not. Okay, good. Every time I think I'm gonna hit start recording, what if I accidentally hit start streaming? That'd be awkward. Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Darren. Today I want to talk a bit about the power of racials in World of Warcraft. I feel like it's a discussion I'm seeing a lot on the forums. There's a lot of people talking about, oh, is this racial maybe too strong? Is that racial too strong? Remove racials, blah, blah, blah. And I've touched on racials in the past, but I gotta just want to make a definitive video for BFA since there's a lot going on. Just kind of an idea of one of my personal thoughts on racials. Whatever Blizzard ends up doing with them is whatever Blizzard ends up doing with them. I kind of took myself out of racials for a while, and after sitting outside of racials, outside of setting the blood of racial, which has been the strongest racial in Legion so far, I think I gained some insight. But before we get into racials, I do want to show you guys a Vulpera. One more thing they added for them is an interesting sleep up taken animation by the Vulpera Hype Caravan, and they have their own sleep animation, like when they wake up. It's like a cat. It's like a cat, or I guess a kind of furry animal just doing a stretch. Like at this point, Blizzard, and apparently they are adding even for them a lot more animations, a different stealth animation, and then all these fur and tattoo marking options. I don't really see that tattoo option, but all these fur options. Look at this. Look at how many. That's just females. Here's the males. There's so many. They're obviously not going to be allied races. No, there's no way Blizzard could make these guys the next allied race. There's only so many customizations. There's no way. Come on, Blizzard. At this point, just give us a Vulpera racials. Just tell us what we want to know. What are we getting for allied races? Because it seems like Horde has been winning on allied races. Wait, let's say the Horde are getting Zandalari, Alliance are getting Dark Iron. The Horde are getting Dark Iron. The Alliance are getting, like, what are they getting? Kulturas? Vulpera? Naga? What are we getting? Blizzard? Come on, Blizzard, tell us. Tell us. They are actually having a AMA or a Q&A. And I did put in a question. They answered last one, so maybe they'll answer mine, and mine is mostly about allied races. Anyway, now we take a look at the Vulpera. I do kind of want to talk a little bit about the races and racials in BFA going forward. I feel like this is something that a lot of people have been noticing ever since about Mr. Pandaria. The racials are making a lot more of an impact than they did back in MoP. Back in MoP, just to give you an example of how little they mattered, the EU, region of EU playing PvP for BFA or MoP was mostly comprised of Alliance players. Alliance had great racials with the human racial, the Night Elf racial to Shadowmeld was great as well, the Gnome racial wasn't terrible either, the Dwarves are pretty good for a healer, most people could play whatever racials they wanted to, and it felt like racials didn't affect because you have so many aspects. You had the trinket options, you had the 2-piece, 4-piece options, you didn't have the ability prune. A lot of people said, oh, okay, the racial, and you would basically use it once every 2 minutes, and that was really it. That one play didn't basically make or break the game. That one play was probably cool, because like, wow, he just shot him out that CC, or that Stormbolt, or that big old Chaos Ball flying at him, but it wasn't like, oh, that one play, and you kind of won the game. It felt like everybody were pretty solid. They did say something about, I think, Troll racial that they had to nerf, because that haste was just too much when it comes to at the very, very, very like highest rank 1 world heroic, because we didn't have mythic at the time. Actually, they added mythic towards the end. I'd say just mythic for just example. Mythic rating, a top echelon tier. People were able to take advantage of the troll racial with certain classes, and they had to tone it down just because it was too much. But it didn't affect anybody else. It felt like everybody else were just fine, no matter what racials you ran. Cut back to Legion, or even WoD. This way you really saw a lot of the swings. You saw how strong the human racial was, because having 2 trinkets was too OP. Cut now to Legion. I feel like racials affect the game a lot more. Again, not just for PvP. Imagine a human paladin with, I don't know, normal trinket, or even adaptation. You already have a trinket for your artifact weapon, you have a racial to break out of stuns, which is most of the CC in the game, and then you have an extra trinket, so then you'll first force your original trinket, let's say to get out of a stun, then let's say you get stunned again, trinket, 30 seconds later, trinket, and every 1 minute you have a trinket out. So you basically have a free adaptation running because you're playing human. Or cut to the Horde side, Orc with Relentless. And I'm pretty sure a lot of you guys have PvP'd and you kind of hate the idea of Orc Relentless because all they do is just sit CC less just because they are an Orc, you know what I mean? And they even nerfed that racial too. When it comes to balancing, I feel like Alliance and Horde on racial balance, PvP or PvE, are more or less similar now. You got some damage for the Alliance and some kind of niche racials for the Horde, which balances out both factions. But when it comes to PvP, you really do still see the same actors. For the longest time, I want to see more gnomes running around PvPing, just because as a Horde, I can just punt more gnomes. I want to see dwarves. I want to see night elves a hell of a lot more. Not just because they're demon hunter, but because night elves are kind of fun to play. I want to see more trolls. I want to see more goblins. I want to see more of everything, you know, to make it as varied as possible. But I don't think that's going to be happening unless we kind of go back to what worked in Mists of Pandaria. What I talked about earlier about Mists of Pandaria, because you had so many things to keep track of. You had your enchants, you had your gems, you had your professions. The class itself had a lot of toolkit available for you. Your racial was just such small, almost insignificant part to a certain extent, compared to everything else that was working. And you could see that the racials were not OP because you would have had one faction. EU and US would have swung both in that same direction, how they did in Warlords General. But because there's so many elements, and the way that the game was constructed class-based for PvP and PvE, even though they probably prioritized PvE, and then kind of PvP was the offshoot, but it was at least, you know, functional, it ended up working out pretty well. And I can say in Mists of Pandaria, the actual class philosophy, how they approached it for PvP and PvE, just from a combat rogue perspective, which was a garbage spec back in the day, garbage. The fact that I got 2k back in Mists of Pandaria last season, I mean, why didn't I get that earlier? The 8-second stun was so strong, and I knew that in the back of my mind, but nobody wanted to play with me. Once you have red buff, Shadowblade's killing spree into a full 8-second kidney, done. Like, it was actually that easy. And you had tricks of trade too. You had tricks of trade. Like, it didn't matter whether I was playing a blood elf. It didn't matter if I was playing human. It didn't matter if I was playing night elf. It actually didn't matter which racial I was playing back in the day. It didn't matter back in MoP at all. In Warlords, definitely started to matter. And I feel like in Legion, it can make a play. Just, let's take us out of PvP for a moment. Just throw us into a Mythic Plus dungeon. I was doing a Mythic Plus today, and we were trying to get Cathedral down. And it was Fortified week, and Cathedral has a lot of mobs. So Fortified buffs a lot of the mobs that are non-bosses. So these mobs are doing a lot of damage, and my Paladin calls for a Belf. We have a limited amount of Paladins or Belfs in that group. We have the Tauren, who is a tank. We have a Belf Paladin, who is a Belf. Then we have a Mage, who's Pandaren. And then we have my ass, which is Nightborn. So only one Belf available in the game. But that Belf racial, even not in the upper echelons of PvE, makes such a play. Because you have so many mobs that just start casting a spell at the same time. And that Belf just interrupts everything. Hell, even has a 1-second blanket silence ahead of time. And when you apply it in PvP, imagine trying to train down a priest. Let's say you're on, going through your rotations of rogue. You go to stun, 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 stun. And there's like 10% health on the enemy. And they just blanket silence him. You stop him from being able to cast in the first place before, as a disc priest, they can even put a bubble on themselves. Gives you 2 more seconds of just free damage where they can't do anything about it. That is so strong on its own. But even in PvE, those ratios seem to be strong. Look at Blood Elves. Look at Void Elves. Void Elves are really, really strong right now for Alliance. I guess Alliance didn't really have anything that had a damage increase. You had your humans, dwarves, gnomes. Not actually a huge damage increase, and now you finally have them, and everybody's playing Void Elves just for that 5% extra damage. It has like a 33% uptime basically. It almost counts like your proc trinkets back in WoD. I guess my thought process is on racials. Would I want them gone as a TLDR? No, I don't want them gone. For World of Warcraft, I feel like it's one of the most unique parts. When you design your character, their class matters, and your racial matters. Your race, who you choose to play, whether you are a warrior or mage or whatever. Let's say warrior. Orc warrior should be, it feels slightly different than a Tauren warrior. Your racial should add that extra niche to playstyle. And I think, yes, when you're talking about like high-end Mythic Plus, like, or maybe like high-end Mythic Plus keys, I guess. Like, let's say you're trying to do like a 30 key right now, which I don't think the highest has been 28. When you're doing 30th key, like plus 30, then I feel like racials, you know, people might want to change their character's race to a different race in order to get that racial to help in this very specific situation. I feel like that's fine. But when you are having racials as strong as they are right now, where if you do a Mythic Plus, me being a Blood Elf Rogue gives me a AoE silence and energy, which helps me do more damage and disrupt the as that would rather kill us or force us to use cooldowns, compared to me playing Nightborn, I feel like it's just such a big play that even in lower keys, it makes a huge difference. And it really does. Playing Nightborn allowed me to kind of learn exactly what my class is about, because I felt like I was kind of using my racial a little bit too much. I was kind of using it as a crutch. But that's, I think, just because of the class design, how things went in Legion, with the Pru and whatnot, you don't have as many abilities to kind of balance your class. You don't have as many things you can do to affect your class in order to keep yourself afloat. You end up using your racial kind of as a crutch, you know what I mean? Just you kind of just lean on it a lot. So I'm not a huge fan of that. I'm really hoping they do something with racials, or they add a lot more things, like professions becoming more important, like actually affecting your gameplay. I was super excited about the belt enchant that they could do, where you can basically give yourself a belt that has a fear, you know, just fear an enemy or something, or reflect, or break you out of movement speed effects. I feel like there needs to be more things in the game where the racials themselves not changed, not buffed or nerfed, but the actual effect of the racial in the end becomes so minute where it cannot make huge plays, but it is still present, where you can kind of use it in the upper echelons where it's like all or nothing, ride or die, like the top of the top, 1% type of like occurrences, you know what I mean? I really don't want to see a lot of racials gone. I would instead like to see a lot of other racials buffed. Let's say like Goblin racial. I mean, there's not a lot of goblins playing, but Goblin racial, that rocket boot, jump, leap, the haste buff itself, I feel like if they were to up it where it's actually like useful, kind of bring up other racials that are not as competitive, because ultimately I would love to see a lot more races running around, not just allied races, but a lot more different varieties of races running around, not just, you know, Q and a BG, and like 80% of the alliance team is just humans, even though human is literally the most boring generic race you can be in any video game for that matter. I mean, so many people make fun of them being boring, but everybody plays them because they're so goddamn good. I think that's my take on it. I really hope Blizzard does look into Mr. Pandaria and their design philosophy and design choices way back in the day, back in MoP in particular, because I feel like they did something back then that was like well done, well put together. If they can kind of somehow take that and kind of try to use that, like class and racials and whatnot, and everything you had back then, as kind of a way to inspire everything we'll have in BFA, then I think they'll might come up somewhere where it's not quite back to MoP, not quite what we have Legion, kind of like a happy medium where there's a lot more for our characters to do, I guess. You know what I mean? Hopefully I'm making some semblance of sense here. Anyway, I think this is my video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Let me know if you enjoyed discussions like these, and what are your thoughts on, I guess, the topic. Would you want for Blizzard to go back to like Mr. Pandaria-ish type of designs to try to bring back in BFA? Or are you kind of fine with the current system where racials should make the huge swings that they kind of do in Legion? Let me know your thoughts down below. I'd like to hear from you guys. As always, if you enjoyed this video, go ahead and like the video. Likes allow my videos to reach a way wider audience and grow my channel, which would be very much appreciated, because I can continue just doing all this and keeping the lights on here. And as always, if you guys enjoy this kind of content, hit subscribe. We put out 2 videos a day, 5.511 duels, BFA updates, discussions like these, patch updates. It's all here. And if you guys want to catch the live streams live and participate, you better hit the notification bell down below in order to be caught up on every single video that goes live and every single live stream that goes out. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed. I'll see all of you in another video.